wrong. Thank you so much for your kind words. But maybe I was wrong when I said I wanted this mic, but I don't know. My relationship to the natural world was shaped by my mother and my upbringing. I was born, as you already learned, in Nicaragua, home to the largest rainforest in Central America. As a child, I spent my holidays on a mountain called Santa Maria de Ostuma, a vast area of pristine, cloud-capped rainforest. I don't know today if it still is as beautiful as it was when I was a child walking with my parents. I would take long walks with my mother. It was she who first opened my eyes to the beauty and wonder of the natural world, teaching me the names of the trees and the flowers, especially the orchids that she loved so much. I inherited my commitment to the environment from her. She taught me the incalculable value of the rainforest and the importance of preserving biodiversity. Please forgive me because my voice is not very powerful at the moment. I've been quite ill in the last 3 months, but I hope I will be able to speak to you enough so that I can read my speech. Future generations may not be so blessed. 495 acres of rainforest are destroyed in Nicaragua every day. Forests all over the world are disappearing at a rate of 13 million hectares per year. If we do not curb our reckless exploitation of the Earth's natural resources, our children and our children's children may never know this beauty, may never walk in the rainforest. The flowers my mother loved could become nothing but a fairy tale. Indigenous people's wisdom forged my understanding of Mother Earth and our responsibility towards it. As the Creed proverb warns us, only when the last tree has died, and the last river has been poisoned, and the last fish has been caught, will we realize we cannot eat money. I founded the Bianca Jagger Human Rights Foundation in 2005 to be a force for change and a voice for the most vulnerable members of society. The BJHRF is dedicated to defending human rights, ending violence against women and girls, addressing the threat of climate change, and supporting the rights of indigenous peoples and defending the rights of future generations. I am committed to indigenous people's rights, and I have campaigned on behalf of the Miskitos and Mayagna in Nicaragua, the Yanomami, the Guarani, and the Suri Paiter and in Brazil, as well as the Tapajos, the Kofan, the Siuna, the Sequoia, the Quechua, and Hurani tribes in Ecuador, the Kon in Orissa, India, among many others, because lately, of course, I have been fighting and supporting indigenous people who are fighting big dams in Latin America. Indigenous peoples do not seek to exploit their environment, but lived in harmony with it. They are the natural custodians of the land they live in, eat, work, and pray on. We in the developed world should take note of their wisdom. The plight of the indigenous people I mentioned illustrate the alarming rate at which the Earth's precious resources are being destroyed by business and corporate greed. There are too many examples of irresponsible corporations plundering the Earth in the name of profit. Oil and mining companies are among the worst culprits. Chevron Texaco actions in the Oriente, Ecuador, between 1971 and 1992 took a devastating toll on Ecuador's northern Amazon forest community and ecosystems, and continues to do so today. Other oil companies, are doing the same with total impunity by dumping toxic chemicals into some 350 unlined pits. They poison the water systems, leading to a spike in cancer rates and a spontaneous abortion, because there is no running water in the region. Local residents, including women and children to this day, have no choice but to drink from bay and to bathe in the poisoned water. One thing I want to tell you about the case of Chevron, I don't know if you've been following, but you know that the victims have never been able to really be compensated. There's been an enormous case in the US, but it is the case of, of a small people fighting a big giant with a tremendous power, and it is almost impossible for them to ever win this battle. Reckless oil exploitation by Shell, Chevron, Total, ExxonMobil, and Eni in the Niger Delta in Niger had led to human rights abuses, death, disease, poverty, and environmental destruction. Life expectancy in the region has fallen to just over 40 years of age. According to the May 2010 report by John Vidal from The Guardian, environment editor, more oil is spilled from the Delta networks of terminal pipes, pumping stations, and oil platforms every year than has been lost in the Gulf of Mexico. On May 2010, a ruptured ExxonMobil pipeline spilled more than 1 million gallons into the Niger Delta. The Athabasca oil sands contain 170 billion barrels of recoverable oil, making Canada's total oil reserve the second largest in the world after Saudi Arabia. These sands are being ruthlessly exploited to the detriment of the environment and the local communities. On the 14th of May 2008, the Beaver Lake Cree Nation, a small Indian community of 900 people in eastern Alberta, filed a lawsuit against the Canadian federal and Alberta provincial government, identifying more than 60,000 infringements that are contributing to the destruction of the environment, the loss of traditional areas, and the decline in wildlife population and fish stocks within their territory. The proposed Keystone XL pipeline, which you probably all know, is wrong, and it was wrong for anybody to have tried to make it work. I'm glad that President Obama has decided not to support it. If we talk about Nicaragua, the Mayagnas in Nicaragua are struggling to protect their ancestral land. The Biosphere Reserve of Bozawas in Nicaragua, second largest rainforest in the Western Hemisphere, home to approximately 40,000 indigenous Mayagna. The Mayagna's existence and Bozawas' unique ecosystem are threatened by invasions of illegal loggers and settlers who has deforested around 150,000 hectares of land since 2009 and are polluting the rivers and threatening the Mayagna people. If these illegal activities are allowed to continue, in 10 years or maybe less, Bozawas may no longer exist. Bozawas was designated as a UNESCO reserve, and the Bianca Jagger Human Rights Foundation has consulted and met with UNESCO on these issues. I have appealed to our unconstitutional president, Daniel Ortega, to declare a state of emergency in Bozawas. But of course, Daniel Ortega has many other things to do than to care about the indigenous people. I'm also greatly concerned about the Belo Monte Dam, which is a project in Brazil, which will divert 80% of the flow of the Xingu River, causing a permanent drought on the river's Big Bend. The territories of the Juruna and Arara people The flooding of forests would generate enormous quantities of methane, a greenhouse gas that is 25 times more potent than CO2. I would like to say to you that I have been working a lot with indigenous peoples in Brazil, working with them to fight the Belamonte Dam, and now with the Tapajós to fight those dams that are being built. There is nothing worse for indigenous people and for communities than these mega dams that are being built. There is an enormous amount of dam, and I will come to that in a few minutes. It's about 420 dams that are being built in the Amazon in Latin America. And why? And for what reason? With the excuse that it is green energy. But it is not green energy. It's destroying the livelihood of indigenous people. It's destroying the rainforest. And why will they build big mega dams when they have the sun and they have the wind and they could be using renewable energy? But dams are not just in Latin America. You have the Ilısu Dam in Turkey that threatened the cultural patrimony of the Kurds and will cause a geopolitical unrest in downstream Iraq and Syria. This drilling, mining, and dam projects caused the forced migration of thousands of indigenous people, the loss of precious water matrices in ecosystems. However, this factor do not seem to deter the companies behind them. Apparently, corporate greed has no limit. And in a few minutes, Ernesto will be talking to you about the canal in Nicaragua, and I will be saying a few words about that. This business and government have failed us in charging headlong down the road towards development. They have left behind a trail of tears, of destruction, and of death. The Universal Declaration of the Right of Mother Earth states that we are all part of Mother Earth, an indivisible living community of interrelated and interdependent beings with a common destiny. I fear that we in the developed world have lost our sense of this common destiny, of being part of the planet and of the greater scheme of things. Instead, in our desperate pursuit of profit and growth, we are heading towards an inevitable climate change catastrophe and destroying the natural equilibrium. We have brought about the destruction of the forest and caused tragic decline in biodiversity, with extinction rates rising exponentially as habitat disappears. We are failing to honor the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. Instead of acting as an indivisible living community of interrelated and interdependent beings with a common destiny, some governments, corporations, and individuals are sacrificing not only our future, but also that of future generations to short-term gains. We must remember the words of Judge Wiramantri, pleading for the rights of the helpless future human beings, deprived of their undeniable birthrights, because we, the present generation, are anxious to increase our wealth and magnify our political power. Can anything, Judge Wiramantri asks, be more backward than the failure to provide for this vast segment of humanity, which far outnumbers the selfish few who are now alive and are concerned only to protect their own rights, whatever the cost may be, to their own children and their children's children. I hope that my children and that my daughter and my grandchildren and my great little grandson will know the beauty of the forest, the flowers and animals I knew as a child. But unless we take decisive action now, unless we revolutionize the way we live, travel, do business, build, eat, and sing, this forest will disappear, and so will humankind. I don't want to just talk to you about my great despair when I look at all of this, but I want to perhaps I hope you will go to the Huffington Post and you will read what I wrote about Pope Francis. Perhaps he is one of the few people who give us hope, because he is a voice in the wilderness, and it is a voice that many people are listening to. As I am prepared with my foundation to go to the big climate change conference in Paris, and I am reading, and I today on tweet, I am on Twitter, Bianca Jagger. And you know, I don't just say that, but I think that the major work I'm doing on human rights, social justice, and environmental issues is on Tweet, is on Google+, is on LinkedIn, is on Facebook, because I use it for that. I mean, what's happening at the moment in Bonn, where the big players from the developed world want to turn their back on the developing world and have erased everything that has to do with lost and found, you know, as part of the negotiation treaty. I have a petition that I will give to the university that I hope that you will all sign on to. It's a petition to world leaders to say that time is of the essence, that the negotiations at COP21, at the end of the line, there is no plan B. If they don't come up with what is necessary in accordance to what the science requires to tackle climate change, we will not be able to avoid catastrophic climate change. And I do hope that you will raise your voice. Each one of you can and must tell your leaders that they cannot go on the way they are. I am fearful of what kind of world future generations will inherit. In Isaiah 24:4-6, the Bible gives an ominous image of a world, not a living but dying earth, in which the inhabitants have ceased to hold their sacred covenant. The earth dried up and withers, the world languish and withers. The exalted of the earth languish. The earth lies under its inhabitants, for they have transgressed the laws, violated the statutes, and broke the everlasting covenant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce Tatiana Navas Nieves, who is the Director of Arts and Culture